Well, it doesn't help that our antiquated education system teaches our young people.
Antiquated education system? I also hate the education system. I'm listening. Tell me more, sir.
Well, it doesn't help that our antiquated education system teaches our young people how to live in this world, but not how to change it.
Hello and welcome. Today's episode is brought to you by vodka and Crystal Light. Vodka. You'll need a lot of it once you realize what your kids are learning at school. Vodka. So in today's episode of me Googling stupid shit and going down rabbit holes, the last episode is where I deconstructed whiteness. Yeah, I Googled deconstructing whiteness. And I made fun of that phrase, the master's tools, quite a bit because they love that phrase. So, obviously, the dumb shit that I Googled this time was the master's tools. And I came up with this lovely gentleman who teaches kids. Now, I don't have quite the same beef with him as I would generally because it looks like he teaches at a private school. Still not something you want your kids learning, but what can you do? I'm a capitalist. Let private institutions destroy young minds in any way they see fit, I suppose.
Naturally, as a ninth grade teacher, I think a lot about the dilemma. I think about how to shock our students into becoming change agents.
I think about how to shock my students into becoming changes in the world. Okay, let's. I mean, if they don't see this enormous problem, that's kind of the issue. This is very religious because the problem is invisible. The problem with if it's like a super religious guy trying to explain to a kid why he shouldn't masturbate too much. Like, well, all those sperm cells are souls that you're condemning to purgatory. That's what I've heard before. That's a good way to shock your kid into not jacking off, or at least feeling like absolute trash every time he jacks off. This is a good way to shock your white students into feeling like just abject trash all the time. Good way to shock your black students into being constantly afraid. Now, if you haven't had the good fortune to come across the concept of a privilege walk, well, he's about to explain what a privilege walk is to you. Keep in mind, he is a teacher.
So, in the beginning of the year, I did what most well-meaning, social justice-driven teachers would do, and we did the privilege walk.
First, I gotta point out, why the hell are there social justice-driven teachers? First, you co-opted the phrase social justice to be only yours and all yours. Now you gotta make your teachers be those goddamn preachers of social justice.
See, my hope was to showcase to my students the invisible and, to be honest, unearned disadvantages they have simply by being a minoritized person in our world. So, one brisk December morning, I ran with about 121 of my students, around 20 staff members, and we went outside to do the walk. As soon as they were lined up side by side, I began to read the statements aloud. Take a step forward if one of your parents has attended college. Up stepped a few of my students, and a handful more, and a couple more. I thought to myself, that's interesting. Okay.
Oh shit, this isn't working the way I wanted it to.
One of your parents owns a business. And yet, a few more students stepped forward. And see, at this point in time, my plan began to crumble before my eyes.
Chat.
So, I said another statement. Take a step backwards if your race can be used against you to explain your faults. Not a student of color moved.
Oh my God, no. Oh my God, no. The black kids in my class don't know that they're oppressed. They're not afraid of every part of the world around them. What am I going to do? I've failed as a teacher. I have failed these students because they're not paranoid. This is the funniest shit ever to me. Because he asked these kids, these students of color, these black kids, oh, does your race hold anything negative against you? They're like, nah. And he's like, oh shit, how do I teach them that their race does? How do I change their minds on this? Maybe these students aren't actually oppressed, and I'm just out of touch. No, they're oppressed, they just don't know it.
They didn't hear me. Take a step backwards if your race is used against you to justify or explain your faults. One or two students pitied me, I guess, and stepped backwards.
Now, this might just be for comedic effect, but he's like, hey, take a step backwards if you experience oppression. Oh, shit, none of you move. Look, buddy, you're black, okay? Step back. Let me just hint. and they felt bad for you and pretended they were oppressed for your benefit. But I'm hoping by the end of this, you've convinced these poor optimistic students that they are oppressed and that life is terrible and scary for them.
And see, by the end of the walk, around 20 or 30 minutes later, what you had was a handful of my students of color ahead of the white staff members. Yeah. And see, this never happens. Y'all laughing because it never happens. And so in my head, I thought, damn, okay, what am I going to do? I realized that my plan was now down the drain. You see, mama didn't raise no punk, and I wasn't going out without a fight. It wasn't that simple. I realized that I could
Oh shit, these kids aren't scared enough.
quickly figure out the situation if I thought about it. Now, on our way back to my class, did I figure it out? Absolutely not. But I realized I could use this experience as a data point to shift my curriculum. By the time we got back to my classroom, I asked a couple of debrief questions, and I got real serious. Explain to me why none of you students moved backwards about that question on race and how it can be used against you.
I shamed them for not feeling oppressed.
Raymond in the back, of course, raised his hand. Well, what about Obama? He was the president, and he's black. Sadly, prior to taking my class, a number of my students, including a lot of the country, for frank, believed that racism ended with Obama's election. Yep, that he simply wiped it out with his radiant smile and silky smooth voice.
No, I think they likely believe that racism, or at least most overt racism, had pretty well dissipated before that, which is what a lot of us believe. Obviously, it'll never be totally gone. There's going to be racist people. I feel stupid making these distinctions. Of course, everybody just knows that kind of by default. There's shitty people, and there's always going to be shitty people. They probably understood, though, that the fact that this country was willing to elect a black guy kind of meant something about the state of racism in that country. And you act like it means nothing. No, I think most of us kind of just thought racism had already pretty well dissipated, as it was one of the least popular things you could be when Obama was elected, was racist.
Next question. How did y'all make sense of the fact that students of color were ahead of all of our white staff members? This time, Brianna's hand shot up. Well, Mr. Peters, times are different. Our parents, more of them are going to college, and they're working very hard to give us what we have. So it's easier for us.
Oh, shit. They're appreciative of the sacrifices that people made before them to make this life much better than our ancestors' lives. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? I gotta convince him that it's worse. I gotta convince him. Okay, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, obviously, but that's actually a thing that morons like Rob and D'Angelo sincerely preach.
I was blown, speechless by this statement, but a little conflicted because shouldn't we be celebrating the fact that our communities of color have some type of palpable progress? I mean, if we're honest, our lives are infinitely easier than our ancestors. But what about police brutality, the wage gap, prison industrial complex? No. Our lives aren't going to be simply easy for us. But if that's what our students are picking up, then we got a problem.
You've got a problem. They're not losing their minds in fear. Now, this is a good way that you can understand that this woke shit is pretty goddamn religious, because in religion, one of their biggest tactics is to use fear, whether it be the satanic panic, whether it be violent video games will cause kids to go shoot up schools.
Luckily, I've had the pleasure of teaching a strictly social justice course at KIPP Academy Lynn, and over there we call it speech and comp.
What the hell is up with these strictly social justice courses? What the hell kind of school are you sending your kids to, you morons?
If I'm being honest with you, being the bearer of bad news, the person to tell them that oppression is real and it's undeniably omnipotent, right? And that if you're not angry, you're not paying attention.
I love that. I love the phrasing he used. Undeniably omnipotent. There's an oppression that's out there that's against these kids that is undeniably omnipotent, and they just don't notice it. They just don't notice it. And somehow it escapes them. Somehow they just go about their daily lives, and they're not gunned down by every cop they pass. And for whatever reason, that shows them that, oh, we've got it better than those before us. You're teaching them to not be grateful to their ancestors who suffered and fought and gained. Somehow they've ignored this undeniably omnipotent oppression. But luckily they have you, and you are willing to let them know that they should be very, very afraid of their fellow countrymen. Good on you. Nobody else is doing that job. I hope you get enough appreciation.
And considering that KIPP is comprised of a lot of immigrant families, I think perhaps one of the most effective and memorable KOS moments is when I had each and every single one of my students call up congresswomen and congressmen to support the maintenance of DACA. Oh, God, I needed that. I need more. Thank you for
bearing with me through that intermission. Luckily, I have another drink. I don't think I should need it. I've settled down since then, though. Just a nice little sip. All right. Okay, where did we leave off? Oh, yeah. The part where he had every single one of his kids, his students, write into a congressman or congresswoman supporting a specific policy. Okay, what next? Luckily, he got that worst part out of the way first, so I shouldn't need any more alcohol.
Months later, I had them all write individualized letters to Speaker DeLeo and Governor Baker, and then we followed up by participating in the Children's March at the State House. And see, all this and more becomes possible, but only if schools adopt the KOS philosophy. Perhaps not in a required core course like speech and comp, which is my suggestion here.
Oh, God, no. Oh, I thought I could get through it. Can't get through it. It's going to be a tough night. Not through a mandatory class, which is what I would suggest. Oh, God. Okay, so anyway, I was making this video to let you guys know, don't worry about what they're teaching your kids. Anyway, as always, just drink a lot of vodka, and don't forget to always hate your whiteness and your maleness and your straightness.
I hate the fact that I'm a straight white male.